Yeah, if we really, I think we're at a very critical point in our development as a country and as a continent. Just browsing through the headlines in the last few months, let's say, the picture, I'm sure you'll agree with me, is not very encouraging. From dwindling oil prices, a declining oil sector, inflation, devaluation of the naira, foreign exchange issues, unraveling of various corrupt practices, and overall a strained economy. And really, one has to wonder, is there an immediate solution in sight? Who's going to bail us out? Are we going to look to foreign aid? Or are we going to look to the West to rescue us? The reality is that the solution cannot be parachuted from outside in. Africans need to create solutions to African problems. And when I say Africans, I'm not talking about Africans by birth. I'm talking about people who live and breathe Africa and really understand the environment. Homegrown entrepreneurship everywhere in the world has always played a key role in economic development, coupled with democratic reforms, free markets where there's creativity, innovation, and competition, and dynamic entrepreneurs that can actually bridge the gap between the rich and the poor and just create more equitable distribution of wealth. And that's the role that you all have the opportunity to play. And so my question to you is, what is your vision as entrepreneurs? Where do you want to take your business or your idea? Many of the global organizations we hear about today started from where a lot of you are today, and they pursued it rigorously. The vision was to index all of the world's information and make it available, easily searchable. And at that point, in the early days as well, they tried to sell to Lycos, but they got rejected. And there were many comments about, this is never going to work, you're never going to monetize this, etc. But they stood their grounds. They stood for what they really believed was possible and did a lot of due diligence to make it work. And of course, we can see that they've moved from this garage to a global player. Even when we think about the story of Amazon, I recall Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, saying that in the early days, they were all involved in packing books. So when people placed orders on the site, they would arrange the books on the floor, kneel down, and actually pack the books themselves. And he was involved in that, to the point where their knees started to hurt. And he said, you know what we need? We need to get knee pads. And his colleague said, no, we need packing tables. But they were that basic and that scrappy in the early days. And look at where they are now. And so my invitation to everyone is to be bold, to think big. There is no shortage of ideas. There's no shortage of problems to solve. You can think big, think global, and start locally. Think about Uber. Who would have thought that it was possible to innovate on transport service delivery? Like, transport, just order a taxi and that's it. What's the innovation there? Until I used the service and I saw my bill and I was like, how is this possible? It was so cheap. It was cheaper than, it was really, really cheap. Who has used the service? Did you get the same experience? And I was like, how is this, the technology I can understand about, but how is this possible? But really, that's the power of innovation. Airbnb. Again, who would have thought that it would be possible to innovate in that way around provision of accommodation, hotel-like facilities? And there's an app, a local app I heard about, that is quite similar to Airbnb in the transport space, which is Go My Way. I don't have data on how well it's doing yet, but conceptually, I think it's a great idea. And so there are opportunities in multiple sectors, from agriculture technology, content, power, etc. And I understand that at the moment, banks give single-digit loans for agriculture. So if I were to propose 5 tips for building your entrepreneurial business successfully, the first would be to create something of value. I think that goes without saying. There's a big gap going from an idea, even to a working prototype, to an actual functional, scalable technology solution. But it's very important to get it right. You know, what is the problem you're trying to solve? What is the opportunity you're trying to create? And to really focus on getting that right. Doing the due diligence, honing your skills. With the internet today, the barrier to reaching and serving a customer from anywhere around the world, it has been reduced. But of course, you have to be ready to do the work, have standardized processes, think about quality of service, and this due diligence will serve you when you need to raise funds later on. So that's all very important. And that's the starting point. So the next one would be show leadership. Yeah, okay. Every entrepreneur is called to leadership. You own the vision, and you're responsible for communicating that vision to other people and helping them to see and get excited about the opportunity. For most startups, you can hardly separate the founder from the startup. There's something we call the shadow of the leader, where the leader casts a shadow on the organization. Quite often, the personality of the leader is reflected in the organization and its culture. Self-awareness and discipline are very important in entrepreneurship, so that you get out of your own way. I've seen some entrepreneurs that are actually their own worst enemies, either because of pride or ego. I mean, I've witnessed a situation where an entrepreneur said to a very strong potential partner and customer who was ready to buy, he said, "We don't need your money." And that was over something that at best could be described as the small stuff. It's very important to get a hold of your own personality and build allies, not burn bridges, especially, well, all the time, but even more so in the early days. It's also very important to have a solid plan. An idea may be great, but if it's executed poorly, then we don't get the desired results. So a very robust plan, I think that's not news. I'm sure everyone is working on that or already has a plan. But what I would add to that is flexibility and ongoing learning are important. It's important to iterate as you go because market conditions change. The competitive landscape changes. It's important to have your radar on, to continue to feel the pulse of the customer, to monitor the trends, to listen to feedback, and to adjust what's required to continue to be relevant and effective. It's also very important to consciously create the culture that you want in the organization, a culture that rewards the right values. And when we talk about business planning, also thinking about the financials, a lot of startups struggle or fail just due to poor cash flow management. Again, it's very important to minimize the overheads at the start, to start lean. And even as part of the plan, think about what already exists out there that you can leverage. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. What can you take advantage of to help you get there faster with the most effective return on investment? For example, if you have a telecoms product, it may make more sense for you to license it to a large telecoms provider. Or if it's a financial software, you may want to create a partnership or sell it or collaborate in some form with a software company that already has the distribution lines and so on and so forth. So it's good to think creatively about the most effective way to take the product to market. It's very important as well to choose the internal and the external team wisely. And I'm sure you've heard this, that it's important to choose smart people to work with you and people who have complementary skills to yours so that you don't have skill gaps within the organization as a whole entity. But what I would add to that, just also from experience working with different entrepreneurs, is also you hire good people and give them the space to act. I see a lot of cases of micromanagement that results in disempowering otherwise very qualified people. And when we think about partners, we can select partners for their financial and strategic value, but also we should think about their value systems. We should think about the level of integrity. We should make sure that we're partnering with people that we're happy to be associated with and that we're happy to work with. Because otherwise the journey would be a lot more taxing than you need it to be. So that's very, very important. And finally, because I know I have just a few minutes, it's very important to focus on institution building, standardized processes. The business has to stand on its feet outside of you, the entrepreneur, or anyone within the organization. So things should be documented. There should be standards and processes in place so that if anyone is missing, the business can go on. And this is something that we need very strongly in Africa. Good institutions and good value systems. And they both take a long time to build. But it's very, very important to have that consciousness and to have that on the radar and to consciously look to building that as soon as possible. So this is a summary of the 5 tips I just went through. And I would end with these quotes from Chinua Achebe. The first one, he said, people create stories, create people, or rather, stories create people, create stories. Basically, storytelling is an integral part of human life and language, how we speak, how we communicate. It's important to cultivate the art of telling the story about your business and about your journey as an entrepreneur. When I first arrived here, just before 5 o'clock, I saw 4 gentlemen wearing a branded t-shirt, wearing branded t-shirts, a solution called Pass On. Oh, there they are. Pass On, I believe it's a solution that helps you to pass jam. Just reading that on the back of the t-shirts. And I told them, I'm sure you guys are pitching. And they said, yes, right? And they were like, and we're building the brand, They were already telling me a story. I was already engaging with them. This is very important in brand building and also would be important when we try to raise funds. We need to actually tell the entire story of the organization, the journey, where we're going, as well as the due diligence and the facts to back up what we're professing. The final quote I wanted to share: one of the truest tests of integrity is its blunt refusal to be compromised. It's important to stand firm for what you believe in. It's good to be open to and listen to feedback, right? To consider feedback. And it's also very important to think about integrity and not being compromised. The country needs that. The continent needs that. Let us build businesses that are based on integrity, ethics, and responsibility. My very best wishes to everyone. Thank you.